Hello and welcome to this first ever podcast. My name is Anneke, and I'm happy to introduce this platform, very modest platform. The idea of doing a podcast has been in the air for years. In fact, I was speaking to a good friend, and we were going to do this together when I realized that I really need to be doing it by myself. And then another reason I've been hesitant is because I feel it's really important that I speak just about what happened to me and stick to my experience and not really share views. The most important thing that I've always been concerned with is to look at the division which is created by people who wish to control us and maybe wish to strengthen that control, and to allow ourselves to leave that division, to get out of it, to stop taking sides. Of course, the political arena is the biggest place where that division is being kept standing. And so, of course, you can say that getting rid of division can be your slogan, but that, of course, it could never happen. Politics is, at this time, only there in order to keep the strong division between people active and activated. And having been, as a child, taken by people who were in control, who were having already some measure of control on local political and in Belgium, and then global political scale, I got this firsthand experience of what it's really like, what is really happening behind the scenes, and versus what we, the public, then receive, what we're being presented with, which is mostly all lies. But as I myself was trained to become, let's say, one of them in the entertainment industry, not as a politician, but I was certainly to be used as a sex slave with politician, as an entertainer, I really got a taste myself of what it's like to be trained to become that person. And because of that, because I was going to be part of it, I really also understand the temptation to enter into that arena, how incredible the mind control is in terms of using someone's innate talent and ability, and then pulling that out, which gives every person a lot of joy to do, even as a child, even under those circumstances. The joy of doing what you're good at and what you may feel you're born to do, and then to have that used exclusively for this nefarious purpose, or one or more. So the focus will always be about looking at sides and examining them and making sure that we can deconstruct the sides. Because my perpetrators were mostly, at least on the surface, were conservative. The main person in Belgium was Paul van den Boeynants, who was at the time the Minister of National Defense. He was also acted more like a mafia boss in terms of the network, which I call the network, which was this group of people that had a secret society amongst themselves. I don't know if some came in from secret societies or not. I think that sometimes I was also used at meetings of secret societies, but they had a secret club, and I call that the network. And that network was connected not only on the local level in Belgium, but was also connected globally. And it was even connected on a really local level, town level in Belgium. And then those people were then getting opportunities to enter into the network in Belgium through Paul van den Boeynants as the big boss at the time, 1969 to 1974. And then were able to perhaps get better posts, get more power in their life, get more money, get more privileges, and so forth. That really is the main purpose of the network, is to conglomerate the power. And then everybody who's in it then soon finds out whether they chose, in the beginning, they sort of fell for, the idea of being able to maybe practice their craft and be good at it and get a platform, end up finding that it's not such a great deal after all. And what you have to do to belong is inhumane. The practices that people are little by little more and more indoctrinated into are insane. And my feeling is that a lot of people are currently feel stuck inside that network, and don't necessarily want to be part of it anymore. But it is certainly very difficult to get out. I had the privilege of, I came in as an outsider first. So the first 3 years, when I was from age 6 to 9, I was treated as an outsider. I was a little girl who was used as an expendable child. So that was when I was in the Belgian network, and I was used for two things. One was a situation in which I could have certainly been killed at any moment, which was certain aristocrats who were extremely sadistic, who used children. And there you just didn't know if you would survive. And I just, by sheer accident, did survive. And the other way in which I was used was to basically indoctrinate what they call the newcomers, which were really not newcomers. They were just new to to raping extremely young children. In those 3 years, from 3 to 9, I was also always aware. I had the distance that this was wrong. What they were doing were wrong. I had my private thoughts, and that helped me in the beginning to survive. At age 9, I was traded up to what was then an international networker, and that person ended up deciding that I did belong with them. And that had to do with my blood. So there was physically, my blood was taken. I don't know what they could tell from that. But they must have also just simply asked my mother who my father was. And then my father comes from a Huguenot family on his mother's side. They were Huguenots. These were aristocrats in France who escaped. They were Protestants. They escaped in the 17th, 18th centuries, a long time ago. This family was called Gaillard de Kerbertin. So they had the small d in their name. They were aristocrats. That means that somewhere they were connected to royals. And that really is what the network is looking for, royal blood. And that makes them special, or that they consider that anybody who has some royal blood in them, even as little as I do, from that line from who knows when, these people fled to Holland, and then my father was born in Holland. My grandfather was Belgian, so my father was Belgian, but so not an aristocratic family in and of itself. It's just that way down the line they figured out, okay, there's royal blood there, so now she belongs. So first of all, for the network, this is the first division. You either are from a bloodline and then you are in, or you are not and then you are out. And so for a lot of people who are in the network and who have espoused this ideology of the network, they feel that they are inherently superior because of their blood. And so it gives them a constant justification to do everything that they do. Because if you're committing harm, you need to somehow find a way to excuse yourself and to justify your actions and blame the victim. And so here is this inbuilt justification constant superiority based on blood. So completely insane. But there we are. So I was determined to be one of them. And that means that I had what they deemed a privilege. That is to say, I got mind control trained, which is torture based. So again, we're talking about people who do this to their own, those whom they consider their own. And I was a 9-year-old child, and they acted like it was a real honor for me to be able to be part of them. And then I was tortured. So they do this to their own children as well. And you can guess that everyone who is part of this network has something, in their childhood. Either they were also mind control trained, or incest is also very common in that world. And it's also child sexual abuse is also not so secretly treated as a good thing. Just to be very clear, that is all part of that ideology that child sexual abuse, that, this children, as if children make the choice, which of course they don't, which is all because these people are also not in touch with their own trauma. And so it creates these ideologies. These ideologies are resting on this unresolved trauma as well. And then the inability to heal. So being chosen, let's say, because of my blood, their determination factor, and then being trained to become part of them, I should tell you that the difference was extreme. I was treated the first 3 years, I was treated as an expendable. That's to say, I was treated as the lowest of the low all the time. I was treated as inferior. I was treated as an absolute piece of nothing. And that's not very pleasant. Although, because I was treated so badly, I also knew that they were wrong. Because I had some self-worth, and even though it was difficult to hang on to that, I did, as I said, keep that distance. And then suddenly, even though during the mind control training, which the original mind control training lasted a whole month and was based on extreme torture and trauma, and the doctor who was in charge of that, Dr. Hans Harmsen, he was very sadistic. And it's not as if he was treating me well at all. No, he was not. And it seemed that he was a bit of the doctor for the special project of the person who had taken an interest in me, this global networker, who in my book I call the big shot. So the big shot was going to make a persona out of me. And for that, he first, even though he was from one of those families that are really big and famous, he first had to go and get some approval from somebody else, from another family. And that other family, or that person in that other family, was clearly higher up in the hierarchy of the network. It's like, because he not only got approval, but he also, these two men together with me there present, decided sort of the persona that I was going to become. But it was clear from seeing them together that the one whom we were visiting at the time was the one making the decisions. And that persona, then the next year when that was put into action, so then I was put in the mind control training. That was not very pleasant. But then afterwards, I had another kind of training. And that I call my narcissist training. But this was where I was going to be an entertainer, as I said. And for this, at 9 years old, I was put, it was really a large basement, but all comforts were there. And I was treated really, really nicely. I wouldn't say that I was treated well, but what was made clear to me there is that I'm special, and everybody treated me that way. And I had a group of people around me who were going to be my entourage, or they acted as my entourage then. And I had a feeling that they were going to be sticking with me. They were talking about future. And they were all very, very nice. And they were treating not me, but mostly my body, let's say my persona, as object of worship. So I was naked. They were all dressed and I was naked. And that was part of this training. So when I was getting singing lessons, they must have determined, my family, my father's side were all classical musicians. So they were going to make me a singer, actress. And I got singing lessons there. And the way I got those singing lessons they were all very positive, very, positive affirmation, and I couldn't do anything wrong. So it was really pleasant again to be getting these singing lessons. But I was naked. So there's this reality that mind control works. It's horrible to say that, but it creates incredible results, because in the classic mind control, the trauma creates incredible results. And here, where I was being treated very nicely the whole time and being treated as someone who's really, really special and who can do no wrong, I was still naked. And having singing lessons naked definitely helps your voice. I'm obviously not recommending this. I'm just saying that the science behind this mind control, there is some science behind it. And so they're speeding up. This is not a necessary thing to do. This is something when you want quick results. It doesn't have anything to do with self-expression, except that I am musical. And so I was being trained to do the things that I naturally love to do. So I sang, but I was naked. And the vulnerability from being naked made me sing a lot better. I was also naked while pictures were taken. I was also naked while I was getting facials. I was also naked while I was getting body massaged. These people were there and they were doing things, but they're just treating my body as an object of worship. So obviously I wasn't raped during that time. I believe it was 2 weeks, and I think it might have been during the school break around Christmas of 1972, we're talking. And I think that this might have been in France. These people were speaking French, and I was going to be a French entertainer. And my persona was going to be part of the pedophile agenda. As a little girl, obviously, the mind control training had me heavily sexualized. And while before, I always had the distance from men, after, when I was used not only as this entertainer, but as a spy and a sex slave as well, or a sex slave spy, or honeypot, as they call it. So the purpose of me being an entertainer was only that I would have the platform so that the most powerful men in the world would be attracted to me. And I specifically was trained so that they would fall in love with me and think that I was their dream girl. And then as an adult, I would be their life partner. I would be able to give them that one thing that they never received anywhere else, and then they would fall in love with me. That is to say, the young part in them that never felt loved, that most isolated part inside of them, I would see that, which is how I attracted the attention of this big shot in the first place. That's what I did with him. I saw him. I saw the little boy in him. I saw his suffering and his loneliness. And he saw that I saw that, and then had me trained to do that with the other men. So that natural quality that came originally in a moment that was divinely inspired was then exploited and extracted out of me. But of course I could do it. I was good at it, and I was trained to do it automatically, so I would do it without even thinking. And of course the dissociation helps you to be really real in the moment and believe everything that is happening with that, in my case, these men. While as soon as I was gone from them, that would all just fall away and just sort of collapse like it never happened. So the mind control, it's like great acting, you know, they're great actors. So in the moment when you're engaging with someone, it's completely real. And then there's no grounding to it. There's no, like in a relationship, there's commitment to each other. That means that when things occur, you work them through. Well, in mind control, you don't work anything out. You just get together. I'm a mind control slave, so I'm just responding the way that I was trained, which is, yes, I feel that I love that man too, and he feels loved. And I do everything that I was trained to do, but I do it very naturally and very believably, because I completely 100% believe it myself in that moment when I'm in that persona. And then when I leave him and I see my owner again, I can tell him, and I can, you know, use my ability to get close to these men to tell my owner then about their weaknesses, to tell my owner about things that they may have said that might be of interest to him, and their sexual preferences, of course, which is always helpful for them to know, because that whole network of power is really predicated on sex addiction, the sex addiction of the people that are involved with it, or that want to become involved with it. So I've noticed how these same people and then their replacements have continued on with their agenda and are still trying to control the world. And the only thing they have, and something that when you learn about psychopathy, you learn that the greatest tool of the psychopath is division. This is really true. This is the strongest tool that they have. So everything that we need to be careful of is not be part of that division. So it is with commitment to truth, and also the desire to unite, the desire to come full circle, to find understanding and compassion, yes, but also to be very firm. You know, someone who hurts children is not safe to be walking around free. That's just the reality. So yes, action needs to be taken in that sense, that these are dangerous people that do need to be behind bars. But then kill them? No. No. Then we're murdering, right? Then we are now participating in the division, and we're making decisions that are not ours to make. So when I say we, and that these people should be behind bars, I mean that that's where they belong, that they're not safe people, and certainly not as leaders, which is what they are at the moment. So I'll just end by saying how my stint, let's say, in the network ended. That is, first, I was really enjoying the treatment I was receiving. I was really happy to be treated well. Well, no, treated nicely. Yeah, not treated well, but treated nicely. It made a hugest difference. And that was, for me, that was the temptation. That was definitely the hook. And the first thing that happened is, well, there were things that were going on that were horrible. And my persona was trained to be a wild sex thing. So in that wildness, things happened that the persona couldn't handle, but I really couldn't. I had a hard time with it. And then a female performer, I was being presented after a year of training. I'm age 9 to 10. I was being presented, and in the week leading up to April 30th of 1973, I was being presented. It was my coming out party for the network. I was going to be one of them. That was my induction into the network. And in that week, I performed. And during my performance, I stepped on the toes of a very well-known singer, female singer, who does not have that. I was going to be a sexual persona. And she was clearly, in the network, she was clearly deemed whatever. She was not a sexual persona. She was the asexual singer. And so that envy of that woman, she and her movie director husband ended up kidnapping me from a place in Italy where I believe we were by Lake Como. And they kidnapped me, drove me to Monaco, and abused me horribly in the sense that I was used to being abused horribly before. And I was also used before to being absolutely humiliated. But I'd spent a year of being treated very differently, of being treated as an object of worship. And also the persona, men were to fall in love with me, and that stuck, that would stick for the rest of their life. They would think of me as their soul partner, or, whatever you want to call it, their life, the love of their life. And here was this couple who were using me, where the husband treated me as a dirty little object. And that's how they wanted me to feel. And she got all the praise and the laudation from him. And they also did some kind of a ritual in a church in Monaco, a reversal ritual where my purity was transferred to her. There was something about my breasts. My breasts were just beginning to bud, and that these little young girl breasts were hers now, and I was getting her self-hatred of her body. So with incantations and fire, and then this sexual abuse that was so humiliating, so horrendous. And they broke the program. So even though I got this sense that the big shot, he certainly felt like a big shot, but he wasn't powerful enough to prevent that. And obviously, once you belong to the club, it's not like now everything is going to be happy from now on, and there's no more fighting. Oh boy. Yeah, that was awful for them. I mean, in terms of their own infighting. She could do that. And they kept me for a day. And then I was found. They probably figured out what happened, and I was found, taken back to that place on Lake Como. And then I had my induction, for which I had to do something I really just didn't want to do at all. And that was the last straw. And so even though I did what I had to do, because it's not like there's a choice in the moment at all, and I was trained for that. But I knew I never wanted to pay that price. I never wanted to be part of this network. It did have something to do also, though, with the program being my program of being that persona, that being broken by being so humiliated. So I have to thank those that envious singer for breaking my program and sort of waking me up to, what is this? This is crazy. This is absolute insanity. And yes, this hook for me, like, you're so nice. Like, if you're not even going to be, if you can't even do that, then forget it. And I'm not going to be part of this. Definitely was the first. And I wonder sometimes what would have happened had that not happened. Even though I abhorred what I did, what I had to do, I do wonder, I have to wonder, had I not been kidnapped and humiliated to my core, would I have left? Would I have challenged my owner, Big Shot, who then ended up doing a 180, the biggest 180 in history of humankind, I believe, from the praise and the excitement of his project, where I was going to be his slave, basically, but also a star that he owned and that was going to continue to work for him and to belong to him. That, from that excitement that he had about these projects, of which I was one, to the horrendous fall, the reprogrammation of, no, you do not belong now, you are back to the lowest of the low. And the way that was done, the extremely graphic ways in which that was accomplished, and how that left me to feel I will never be successful. And all of these programs now, we're getting through more because the year of praise really did a number on me, so that the humiliation was more deeply felt as well. But they didn't kill me. They put me back in the Belgian network. Those Belgians never realized what happened. Van Boeynants just used me for the VIP guests because, he, for a while, probably held me ready in case I was going to be asked to be taken somewhere to see the Big Shot. But eventually he realized that no one was coming for me. So the last year in the network, which is really the topic of my book, is the description of meeting a young gangster who first took a liking to me and then ended up really abusing me, and then ended up rescuing me at age 11 and made a deal for my life. So at age 11, I was out. And I really was. I was free. I was not checked upon or anything like that. I had been given very precise life instructions to follow by the gangster. And as far as I know, I don't believe that Van Boeynants and the people that were there at the ritual, which was the last ritual, I had a near-death experience. And I believe, as far as they knew, that I had died. That was certainly their plan to begin with. So I don't know if they knew that I came back to life and that I was taken back to my home with very specific instructions for my survival. I don't know if anybody in the network knew that I was alive. So for most of my adult life, I was off the hook, and then I used that time to heal. And the healing helped me to see how the mass mind control that is happening now from those same types of people that want to control the world, the extreme trauma, the traumatized place from which they come, that creates the insanity that they're coming with, how all pervasive this is, how good they are at it, and how all pervasive this is, and how it is impossible for us to realize how it affects us and how we unconsciously participate. And all these blind spots that are really working on our own unresolved trauma. Every part of ourselves that we have not been able to heal is going to be co-opted and used, whether it is with an identity, creating identity, which really means creating parts, which is not who you are. I mean, the real you is beyond parts, is beyond identity, or whether it is through all the crazy division on either side. You know, I have been left-wing my whole life because I like the idea of equality. But we have to be very careful that this equality is not going to be a sort of communism that looks just like fascism, you know, where people are being deprived from the basics for the comfort of the few. That's certainly the way in which these people have been pushing everything for them to be able to sort of escape what they inflict on us. And it is really important that we don't unconsciously, accidentally participate. And how do we participate now? We participate by taking part in the power structure as it is. And the power structure as it is, the power paradigm as it exists today, means that any hook that gives parts of you that are not healed attention and power that you need in order to cover over your unresolved trauma, the places where you don't have strong self-esteem, any type of status, whether it is because you've studied and then you have your certification and then you're certified and then you are the expert, you know, however many years or months. Some people take 20 years to get to that place, and others take a week-long yoga teacher training and are a yoga teacher. Whatever it is, though, it is the concept of taking anything at all from the world and using it to lift yourself up, to make yourself feel more comfortable than you would be if you didn't have it. Everything to do with power and power addiction, and how this invitation is constantly there. And it is also part of that secret. The secret is we get the invite to use power. We get the invitation to take our own place and to cover over our trauma and to be an expert or to have power in some way. And so we participate unconsciously as we need that position of power, whether this can be obviously in a personal relationship also, right? In a personal relationship where someone is just not as aware of something as you know, they're maybe more vulnerable. So you can feel, and they look up to you. So you can take that and just use just that to feel good about yourself, when in fact, there's something that's being covered by it. So it is by, very simply, it's maybe too simple to get it, but it's by looking up to the people giving our power away, whether it is the people who are trying to control the world and who do impose certain things on us that we are pretty much forced to participate in and give our power away in certain ways, or whether it is various teachers and kinds of people or situations with people that maybe you generally don't look up to, but in certain situations you just are like a child, you don't really are able to be empowered, which indicates there's work for you to do. And then the ways in which you look down on people, in which you use the power to look down on people. So if we accept that the need for power is based on unresolved trauma. The need for, power in the context of the toxic power structure. I'm not talking about empowerment, and I'm also not talking about authority, something that I know my stuff, right? I share my stuff. I know about it. I'm an authority on it. But do I need my position that I receive from it? That's the question. So that is what I am constantly looking at. And every time there's a temptation that has to do more with power or glamour or anything, then I'll have to deeply look inside myself and maybe do some healing to get to the truth of the situation. Yeah. And if we accept that trauma is the basis of this toxic power structure, then it is maybe very easy to see that healing trauma is the solution. And healing trauma is obviously what stops the division. Healing our own trauma is what will stop the division. If you accept that the moment you judge, you're actually looking at an unhealed part of yourself. That may be hard to accept because there's some people out there that may seem very different from you. And they are. But it is your judgment that connects you to them. It is your charge inside yourself, your negative feelings that really are an indication for you that there's something that you're not accepting. And that is where you can go look in yourself. It doesn't mean that you are doing the same things that this person is doing. It's like if we think of the current world leaders and what they do, well, I could say, well, obviously I'm not like them. And in many ways I'm not. But I can understand them. And then we do what we do. We do our work. I do my work. This is my role. And with compassion. But it is, of course, it would be very easy, and I have done this for a really long time, it's just to put them below me, to think of them as less than. So that's my own personal power structure, where I look down on the most powerful people in the world. And I also look up to them, of course, because I'm also afraid of them. So that's the imbalance that I can look at for me to heal. And that is where everybody can look at themselves and then to go in deeper into our own landscapes, into the places where we have not been receiving the love, the acceptance that we deserved, certainly as children, and that we need still, that is still an emotionally unfulfilled need. So we go into those places and we find a way to fulfill it. And this is not possible unless you have some connection to spirit. And we'll be talking about all these various topics in this podcast, mostly about how do we, if I interview someone and they're I suspect that they're on one side or another side, I will challenge that. So that was the introduction. I'll be referring to this introduction also if you need to hear about my story, because I will not be sharing a lot about my own history in this podcast. This will be discussing various topics. So thank you and welcome. And I look forward to our journey together.